Hi guys, I'm Scratch, and today we're going to be talking about how to find inspiration for your factory designs. When I've posted my builds to Reddit, I often get asked where I find inspiration, and so I thought I'd show you around some of my factories and tell you what inspired each one of them. But I'm not only going to show you where I get my inspiration from, I'm going to show you my two-step process for applying that inspiration to a build. Step 1 is to decide what your primary focus is. This is your main goal when designing a factory. It's what everything's going to be based around. Step 2 is to come up with some secondary focuses. These are smaller details, and what they'll do is help keep your build looking cohesive and add a little bit of polish. But I think the best way for you to understand this process is to show you how I've applied it to some of my factories. Here we are at my iron ingot factory. So one great place you can find inspiration is obviously real life. My primary focus for this build was a service station I saw driving home one day. Unfortunately, I can't find an image of it online, but basically it was as if a normal pointed building that was like split down the centre. And you can kind of see how I've taken that idea and used it in this build to create this large central open corridor in the middle. So you can see how that as my primary focus has defined the shape of the overall build, and then I've fit everything else around that central focus. In factories before this one, I'd always neglected to add any kind of like natural entrance, so I included that as one of my secondary focuses because I wanted to get better at that practice. I also wanted to try and build steps, which I'd never done before, so as you can see here, I incorporated that into the entrance of the building. As you can see from these two small details, I chose things that I hadn't really done before, or something that I felt was missing from previous builds, and this will help you progress as a builder by choosing things that push you out of your comfort zone. Another great way to find inspiration is to look at what other players have built, and that's what I did with my copper factory. And so the primary focus for this build was a video made by the amazing builder Stin Archie, which I'll link to in the description. They built this amazing factory that looked like an ancient temple, and so I thought I'd give it a go and put my own spin on it. The first secondary focus on this build was the colour scheme I picked. I gave it this sandy colour to try and make it look more like an ancient temple. The other secondary focus I chose was to use the small quarter round foundation pieces to add details like these pointy bits into the pillars and walls of the build. Using a consistent colour and picking out a single buildable type, like using the quarter round foundations like I have here, can really help bring your build together and create a consistent look across the whole factory. And they're really things you should be considering when picking secondary focuses. Primary focus for my concrete factory was the landscape itself. I really wanted to fit this into this little cove here in the map, so I decided on the pill shape, as that would fit nicely in the space that was available and look like it was at home here. The map of Satisfactory is so beautiful and has some really interesting areas in it. So why not challenge yourself to fit a factory into an odd shape, or to use the undulations of the ground to dedicate the shape of your factory? It can lead to some really interesting builds. The secondary focus for this build was similar to my iron factory in that I wanted to create an entrance, but this time for trains. So I really emphasised it, using this ramp slope that cuts into the building. Picking a secondary focus that you've used before can really help you develop your own style and a consistency. In fact, if you want to use the same secondary focus for all your builds, then do that. It will help you create a signature style all of your own, and when people see your builds, they'll know it's you. A great example of this is a builder called Fluxo, who I'll link in the description. He creates beautiful factories, and you can see his signature all over them. So I have 4 different steel factories, but this is the main one, and my primary focus for this was again a real building. Every day I travel to work, and on the train I see a building as I pull into the station, and its walls inspired this design. And so this was another example of getting inspiration from the real world, but this time not exactly copying the whole building, just taking elements from it, like the walls or the windows, and just seeing how you can best represent that in game. Since my primary focus was a wall design, I wanted lots of walls to show that off on. So I decided to put each process of this factory into a different building. And so really that dictated my secondary focus, which was to add a road system to tie all the buildings together. Now you might be saying, a road system is not a small detail, and so why is it my secondary focus in this build? Secondary and primary focuses are not dictated by how big they are or how much time they'll take. They're simply what your main focus is and what your secondary focus is. So it basically dictates their importance. The primary focus should be the main thing, and the secondary focus should complement it or just add to it. If your secondary focus is getting in the way of your primary focus, maybe you need to look at changing those secondary focuses. From my crystal quartz factory, I'd seen a lot of examples of people using walls very close together to create like this slatted look, and I'd seen a lot of people using signs as lights, and so I wanted to combine those two things in my primary focus for this build. And so I used the angled walls and large billboards to create this look and tried to carry it through the whole of the build. It may seem like I've chosen two primary focuses with the lights and the slatted walls, but really my primary focus is how to combine the two together. And that's a really interesting way to come up with new designs. Putting two things together will come up with something interesting that people haven't seen before. The secondary focuses I chose for this build were to enclose the refineries and to sink the train station down into the foundations. I chose these because I wanted to make the train station and the refineries look more like they were part of the building. Choosing secondary focuses that reinforce each other or have the same goal in mind can really help take your designs to the next level. The last factory I want to show you is my second Caterium factory. The primary focus here was to create some detailed wall designs. So the primary focus really was to add as much detail into a wall design as I possibly could, and this is what I came up with, and then I decided to complement that with some uplighting, which really helps highlight the wall designs I've created. The secondary focuses I chose on this build were to add the docks on the side of the water extractors and the control room above the refineries. Now these are both strictly aesthetic, so some people might not be into that, but I really wanted to challenge myself to make this look a bit more real in inverted commas and see what I could come up with. Adding secondary focuses like this can help you mix up a build to give it an interesting look and also to keep it a bit more interesting for you to build. So that's my process. I hope this video has helped you understand how to take inspiration you might have and apply it in an interesting way to your builds. If you have any cool inspirations, please drop them in the comments. I'm always looking for things to get inspired by and things I can add into my builds in the future. If you want to keep up to date with all my videos, please hit subscribe to be notified when the next one drops. And why not check out this video next of my massive nuclear build where I go into big details on how I built it and why I built it. See you next time.